The Xbox news so far this week has been pretty dire, especially surrounding the likes of Xbox Game Pass. I know now that many of you are actually considering just buying your own games instead of going down the subscription route, and I really don't blame you. If you are looking for some games to purchase though on your Xbox consoles, then a brand new sale has dropped for this week, and there are some fantastic games that you certainly need to take advantage of. Before we do dive in though, I do give away a free Xbox game as part of these sales videos every single week. All you have to do is just comment below and you're automatically entered, and I will draw one lucky winner in next week's video. Congratulations to last week's winner. Just hit me up on our awesome Xbox Nation Discord server and I will get that game right over to you. With that though, let's dive right into these sales, and I do apologise in advance for making that backlog even larger. First up, we have Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and this one really took everyone by surprise. Instead of a generic tie-in, it's actually very heartfelt, funny, and a story-driven adventure that really nails that banter and camaraderie of the entire Guardians team. In this one though, you can only directly control Star-Lord, which is a bit of a shame, but you can still command your crew in combat by turning battles into coordinated chaos with Drax, Rocket, Groot, and Gamora. What really did elevate this one though is its writing, as it's very snappy, it's got hilarious dialogue with tons of emotional weight, and a really cool soundtrack that's just packed with 80s hits. It's like being inside a Marvel movie, but one where your choices shape your entire journey. At launch, some of you may have skipped it because of superhero fatigue or just the poor reception due to a Marvel's Avengers, but at £9 after an 85% cut this week, it's a true steal and a game that you need to play. Owlboy is a game that I doubt many people have ever heard of, but that's why it's so perfect to add into this sales video as of today. In this one, you play as Otis, a mute owl that's struggling to prove himself while navigating a floating world that's torn apart by sky pirates and ancient secrets. The gameplay actually mixes platforming with aerial combat, letting you kind of carry your companions who lend unique abilities, and adds a ton of layers of exploration in terms of its puzzle solving and so much more. What really shines though is the artistry here. As you can see on screen now, there's a lot of lush environments, expressive animation, and also a soundtrack that matches every emotional beat. It does feel like a true love letter to classic 16-bit adventures, but it is elevated with tons of modern polish and cinematic pacing. It is just £4 this week thanks to that 80% discount, and it's a bargain for a game that has both charm and a lot of depth. A lot of fans, including myself, have begged for a Japan setting for quite some while, and Assassin's Creed Shadows finally delivered us this fantasy, and it's actually pretty good. This one actually splits your time between a stealth-focused shinobi and a samurai with sheer power, and actually gave us a real variety when tackling each of the different missions. The world of feudal Japan has been brought to life as well, with lots of seasonal weather, reactive NPCs, and honestly such breathtaking landscapes full of castles, villages, and also forests. The overall stealth mechanics do feel quite refined, which is quite nice to see, especially compared to the likes of Valhalla, which basically turned this game into a combat RPG. As a brand new title for 2025, it still carries a rather premium price tag, but with 40% off, it does drop it down to £41.99, which is quite a good discount soon after its launch. Sometimes you don't want epic battles or even high stakes drama. Instead, sometimes you do just want some cozy vibes and a bit more relaxation after a hard day's of work. Well, Calico is a whimsical life sim which I kinda came across a couple of years back now, and your overarching goal in this game is to rebuild a magical cat cafe. Along the way, you'll be able to decorate it, bake different products, and so much more, and it's kind of like Animal Crossing in its nature. The art style is also pretty unique, as you could probably see on screen now, as it's more pastel and soft and sort of leans more heavily into that cutesy sort of charm. It's the kind of game that's designed to melt your stress away, and yes, although it is quirky and a little rough around the edges, that's part of its personality. At £3.50 with a 65% discount, it's a tiny price tag for a lot of feel-good energy, and my daughter absolutely loves it. Edge of Eternity is an indie RPG with ambitions as big as the classics that it is inspired by. If you missed this one when it was added to Xbox Game Pass a couple years back now, I do highly recommend it with an 80% discount that it has right now. It actually blends turn-based combat with tactical grid movement, giving battles a strategic edge while feeling very cinematic. The world is sprawling with a mix of sci-fi and fantasy elements, and it also has a soundtrack that's been composed by the same gent behind Chrono Trigger's soundtrack, which is such a real pedigree. Whilst it's not as polished as other AAA JRPGs in the same space, the passion really shines through this one with a heartfelt story, varied environments, and so much deep customization. It's one of those JRPGs that never gets spoken about enough, and I wish more of you gave it a real chance. Capcom really nailed it with Street Fighter 6, as they really managed to strike a balance between competitive depth and also accessibility. Longtime fans really received a technical layered fighter with tight mechanics and flashy combos, while all of us newcomers really did benefit for some simplified controls that still feel quite satisfying. The game isn't just about versus matches like the previous entries, instead it did add what they call a world tour mode, where you basically explore a semi-open world hub, customize your avatar and then challenge fighters on the streets. The style is also pretty bold with graffiti-inspired visuals and a soundtrack that really pulses with us all that energetic energy. I've never been one to get into these sort of fighting games, but I actually quite enjoyed this one when I did grab it, and it is quite accessible for all of us noobs. It is now sitting at half price at £17.49, which is a fairly decent price point for this week. I have to say, if you are a strategy lover just like me, we often reminisce about games like Heroes and Might and Magic, and Songs of Conquest actually proudly carries on that torch. It is a turn-based strategy game with a very striking pixel art style, and it gives you kingdoms to manage, armies to raise, and magical songs of power for you to wield. Every battle is very tactical with terrain, unit synergy, and clever planning that makes all the difference as you come to expect in a strategy title. Outside of combat though, you'll be able to expand your domain, gather resources, and chase rival warlords across handcrafted maps. The game looks to blend that nostalgia that we feel with any strategy game with a lot of fresh ideas, and it does create something that feels both classic and modern and really does stand out amongst the strategy crowd. At £17.50 is a strong value, especially considering the amount of depth and replayability here. If you want a strategy game that rewards cunning while dazzling you with beautiful art, then this one is a true indie gem. If there's one thing that everyone loves, it's crewing a pirate ship and causing chaos with your friends. Putting that ship in space can only improve things though, well, that's unless you've been vented into the vacuum at least. One game that actually launched back in July this year with a sort of Sea of Thieves in space stylization is Wildgate, and it's so criminally underrated and you need to grab it as soon as possible. In Wildgate, you and your crew of fellow space pirates will face rival ships to be the first to claim what they call the artifact, and that's a relic drawing the galaxy's nastiest people to this treacherous sector full of life-threatening cosmic perils. Of course, because you are pirates, that race for the relic isn't a friendly one, and you can expect some very over-the-top and fun combat scenarios across PvE and also PvP. It's so much fun with what I played so far, and I really do hope it gets some more eyes on it thanks to this sale. If you are wanting to experience a very fresh take on the beloved Darksiders franchise, then I highly recommend Darksiders Genesis for this week. This, of course, as you can see, is a top-down action RPG that lets you play as War and Strife as you battle through hordes of demons and angels in a quest to uncover a conspiracy that's threatening the balance of the entire universe. With its fast-paced combat, alongside the co-op multiplayer, which is a first, and also a focus on exploration, Genesis really did bring a new perspective to this series while still staying true to those overall roots. As someone who absolutely adores the likes of Darksiders 2, I was always quite skeptical of this sort of isometric single-player experience. I actually did prefer this one to the traditional third-person view, which is certainly something that I never really expected. At £8.74 is a great deal for fans of action RPGs, and if you just love that Darksiders universe. Laika Age Through Blood is described as the first Motorvania, and yes, that means a motorcycle-based Metroidvania that's dripping with tons of atmosphere. Before doing some research for this video though, I actually never heard of this one before, but I'm actually quite glad that I've stumbled upon it. Upon looking into this one with the various reviews and gameplay online, you essentially ride, fight and explore across a desolate wasteland, balancing high-speed traversal with tight combat mechanics. The story also sounds like it dives into themes of revenge, survival and resilience, giving the violence a more emotional edge to it. The art style is painterly and really raw, and it's something that immediately jumped out to me when I saw it for the very first time. Many online reviews as well, especially across Steam, do call this one quite difficult, but incredibly rewarding, and for £6.79 it looks like a standout indie that we need to try for this week. Avalanche Studios turned the wastelands of Mad Max into one of the most underrated open-world sandboxes of its era, and the fact that it's down to less than a cup of coffee is pretty outstanding. In this one, you of course play as Max, scavenging for resources, battling raiders, and building the ultimate car, known as the Magnum Opus. Vehicle combat really is the star of the show throughout this experience though, and it truly is a one-of-a-kind experience. There is everything from explosive chases, harpoons ripping enemies apart, and brutal melee fights when the action spills onto the ground. Funnily enough though, this does have the same sort of combat system like we see in the Batman Arkham games, so you definitely know is bloody good right out the gate. Again, at just £3 thanks to a massive 90% discount, is easily the best game sale that I've seen for this week. If Animal Crossing ever had a slightly spooky cousin, it would be Cozy Grove. This places you in a spirit scout camp on a haunted island, and you'll be helping ghostly inhabitants finding peace while slowly bringing colour back to their overall world. The art is quite whimsical and hand-drawn, with tons of charming characters and daily tasks that are designed to be played in short, relaxing bursts. This is another game on this list that isn't about grinding or even rushing. It's more about those sort of cozy vibes and unwinding, with the story beats unlocking over time as you bond with the island spirits. I did actually play this one on Switch after my partner did recommend it to me, and whilst it's not my style of game that I want to dive into again, especially if you do prefer those sort of less action heavy and cozy experiences. Halo in real-time strategy form might have sounded pretty strange, but Halo Wars made it work, and I just wish we got a third game in this series already. In this one, you control UNSC forces from a top-down perspective, building bases, commanding Spartans, and unleashing vehicles in utter chaos. Unlike many RTS games on the market, it's actually more streamlined and accessible, and it really is designed for consoles without sacrificing that tactical depth. It's kind of like Command & Conquer with a Halo flavour, and to be honest, I think that's why I love it so much. There is a nice story campaign as well that ties neatly into the Halo's lore, offering a different perspective on the Human Covenant War. For less than a fiver, you're getting one of the most approachable RTS titles around, and I highly recommend it on the Xbox Series consoles. Ubisoft's The Crew Motorfest really embraced the open world racing formula and injected it with so much festival energy, and is very similar to Forza Horizon but in a great way. Instead of the likes of Mexico, this one is now set in a vibrant recreation of Hawaii. It's not just about cars either, as you can also swap seamlessly between bikes, planes and boats, making every journey varied and also fast paced. Events do range though from the typical competitive street races to then themed playlists that celebrate different eras and styles of motorsport, with tons of sun-soaked coastlines and lush mountains, making exploration as fun as the races themselves. It's very much Ubisoft's answer to Forza Horizon, and I think is bloody fantastic, which is quite an odd thing to say about a Ubisoft game in the year of 2025. Again, it's now down to £15 with a 75% discount, and it makes it a perfect time to dive in as it's the lowest price it's ever been before. Elex II really continued Piranha Bytes' reputation for sprawling, rough around the edges RPGs, and it does reward your persistence. This one though is set in a sci-fi fantasy sort of hybrid world, and you will once again return as Jax, tasked with uniting factions against a looming threat. The game really does thrive on your choice though, as you can sort of align with different groups, influence storylines, and shape how the entire world reacts around you. Combat can feel a little bit clunky around the edges, but the freedom to explore alongside jetpacking across the landscapes really does make up for it. Fans of games like Gothic or even Risen will feel quite at home with this one. It's unpolished but brimming with so much ambition. At £10, it's a solid pick for players who enjoy deep, choice-driven RPGs. If you can overlook those rough spots, Elex II offers hundreds of hours of world building and freedom, and it can be pretty excellent. So, what game are you going to pick up in this week's Xbox Store sale? I'd be keen to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. I am also curious to hear from you as well if you'd like to see me add a couple of physical games into these sort of sales videos. That being the best deals on at say Best Buy in the US or even the Game Collection here in the UK. I would be keen to hear your thoughts down below. Remember to like this video if you did enjoy, and also subscribe as I bring you more Xbox content every single day. Somehow, if you haven't heard of it yet, there were some massive changes to Xbox Game Pass, and I recommend you watch the video on screen now if you haven't seen it already.